Hey guys, it is August the 22nd, 2025, and I hope everybody's been having a wonderful day so far today. Happy TGIF to everybody out there. I know you guys are excited about the weekend beginning. With us going into the weekend, these are the times when, those temptations really start to come up. We get some free time on our hands. People invite us over to their homes. We get invited to a block party, our neighbor's house, our family's house, whatever it may be, just a barbecue. Maybe we just get invited to our next door neighbor's house for dinner. And, you walk over there and the next thing you know, they're handing you a cold beer, or they're in there shaking up martinis and pouring you a glass, and you've got to make that decision. Am I going to stay sober? Am I going to just drink for tonight? Which is often what we do. We tell ourselves, it'll be okay. I mean, I've already got 30 days of sobriety. I've made it this far. I can definitely have control of it this time. But it never works out that way, guys. It just never does. Just don't fool yourself into thinking that you're going to get control of it. I have never spoken to one person that decided to go back and have a beer or a cocktail or whatever and was able to just stop the next day. I'm sure there's people out there who have been able to do so, but I've never spoken to anybody that has. As a matter of fact, I have spoken to a couple people now that I say that, but not very many. There's been a few I've spoken to in the comments that have told me, I screwed up last night, had a drink, and I'm not doing that again, and they get right back on the wagon the next day. So I take that back. That's my bad. Please, I hope no one gets offended by me saying that. But my point is that, for the most part, people don't. They go back and they have that one glass of wine, that one cocktail, that one beer, or whatever, and it's off to the races. Like I say, who knows how long we go on drinking before we decide to try to wrangle it back in again. And often, what ends up happening is, we'll go, it'll be like a Friday night like tonight. We'll make that decision, that split moment decision to have a cocktail or a drink. And then time goes on. And often what ends up happening is something catastrophic ends up happening again that makes us go, okay, I've got to stop this again. Something bad happens. We get arrested. We end up getting into a fight with someone. Or we end up getting really, really sick and wake up in the morning throwing up blood, or end up in the hospital with pancreatitis, or end up in the hospital with liver problems, whatever it may be. Get into a car accident or get a DUI. There's all kinds of things that happen, but that's often when we go, okay, enough's enough. I need to get, my life back in order again. And time has gone by, and then we have to go through that whole process all over again of dealing with those withdrawals and fighting off the urges and the pacing back and forth and the constant thinking about alcohol or a substance because we know that that'll fix how we feel. But that's not what I wanted to talk about today. I just really wanted to just throw that in the beginning because it is Friday. And, I just wanted to remind everybody, because I know, people are going to be going out and doing all kinds of stuff tonight. A lot of us are going to end up going straight home. Some of us are going to go out and do things. And we are going to be faced with those decisions to make. And I hope that everybody here, makes the right decision this weekend. If they are faced with having to make that decision, they go the right way and don't decide to go back because there just isn't any self-control. Once we, start drinking and realize we have a problem, that's it. It's either all or nothing. Either we drink or we don't, or we use or we don't. There is no dabbling or, I'm just going to do it on Friday nights, or I'm just going to do it on Saturdays, or I'm only going to do it, when there's a big event going on or something like that. It just doesn't work out that way. So, for today, let's stay sober today. But what I did want to talk about is I wanted to tell a story today. And today's story is kind of a cautionary tale about, some of the things that happen when we get intoxicated. And my story today is, something that happened to me one time many years ago, on a night that I'd been drinking very heavy. I was hanging around with a friend of mine that I'd known for years. And, we started off just hanging out at my house. And then things progressed, and I almost ended up getting arrested this day. I'm really lucky that I didn't, but it was because of the poor decisions that I was making because I was intoxicated that led me to almost getting arrested. And this wouldn't have been some little deal either. This would have been a big problem if I'd gotten in trouble for this. So let me go ahead and get into that story. So like I said, this is like a cautionary tale. I used to do a lot of really stupid things when I would get intoxicated. And like I always say, I used to show off. I used to pull stunts. I was the guy that you could dare me to do anything, and if I was drinking, I would do it. It didn't matter what it was. If you told me to put a frog in my mouth for 10 seconds, I'd do it. I remember one time I was in the kitchen. It was really late at night one night, and there were a few of us hanging around late trying to finish up some prep work for a big event we had the next day. And it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was just me and a couple of other guys. And of course, we had been drinking that night. And one of the guys dared me to eat a rotten potato for like $20. And me being me, being the drunk guy that I was, I shoved that rotten potato right in my mouth. It was one of those red bee potatoes. I'll never forget the way that tastes. I'll never forget that moment. And for $20, and just to be seen, for people to, say, man, that guy's crazy. He ate a rotten potato one day. Just, stupid stuff like that. But the story that I have for today is a little bit worse than eating a rotten potato. So like I said, a buddy of mine and myself, one afternoon, this guy and I used to both have Jeeps, and we used to get into a lot of trouble in our Jeeps too. We would often have days off together. He was one of my managers, so I was the general manager, so I'd schedule him off on my days off. So that him and I could go out four-wheeling or go kayaking together. And a lot of days, we'd load up our Jeeps with some food and, some shovels and axes and jacks and, tow straps and coolers full of beer. And we'd take the tops off of those things and take the doors off, and we'd head out into the country. We would just be driving out in the middle of nowhere down some country road, and then all of a sudden we'd see some trail that, kind of veered off the side of the road, or I'd just spot some place that looked like we could get up through there. And if the place was remote enough and there wasn't anybody around, I would just drive right onto people's property without a care in the world. And now that, I've owned my own house, since I was 21 years old. I never really had a bunch of land until now. But now looking back, how frustrating that must have been for the people that owned that land, and how disrespectful I was to those people's property. I just wasn't thinking, I wasn't using my brain. I was using my drunk brain, which doesn't work very well. And I wasn't thinking. I wasn't thinking about the fact that I was invading other people's privacy. I was trespassing on their land. I could have potentially have gotten shot by doing these things. I could have potentially gotten myself arrested by doing that. And it's not like I did it just once. I used to do it a lot. Now, we weren't out there like doing anything bad. We weren't, lighting fires or destroying people's property or throwing trash around or anything like that. We would just get out there and just ride around out in the middle of the woods. And one time, this guy and I actually had, we ended up on some property that we shouldn't have been on. And there was a really big hill that you had to go down. And once you started going down that hill, this was a place that a lot of people would go four-wheeling on, out in the middle of nowhere. It was a well-known place, but it was private property. And once you started going down this really big hill, you were committed once you started going down. And the very bottom, there was always a big mud puddle down there. Depending on how much rain that we had had recently, depending on how many people had been down there in that hole who had gotten stuck down in there, just depended on how deep that hole was, how muddy it was, and what your chances of getting stuck in it were. And this one day, we're out there trespassing, and my buddy was in front of me. He had a red Jeep, and he went down that hill, and as soon as he hit that water, I knew it was bad. He dropped in that water. A big wave went in front of his Jeep, and he was stuck. He could not get out, and he started crawling out of the driver's side window, and I screamed at him because he was about to turn the Jeep off, and I was like, do not turn that Jeep off because the water's going to go rushing right up the exhaust pipe and get into the engine. So we had to leave the engine running, and that day we didn't bring any tow straps or anything with us, so I had to get out of there, drive to Lowe's, go buy a tow strap, and then drive all the way back out there to pull him out. And the whole time he had to sit there with his Jeep running. Both of us had been drinking. If we had gotten caught out there, we would have been in so much trouble. But luckily that day, you know, we got out of there. I bought the tow strap, went back and yanked him out of that hole, and we got out. But this time the story that I want to tell today wasn't quite the case, and this didn't have anything to do with four-wheeling this day. This day, we almost really got ourselves into trouble. Like I said, we had started drinking at my house, and I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of context. You know, I hung out with this guy a lot, and we did a lot of stupid things together. He was kind of a wild guy like I was, and like I said, one day, it was one of my days off. He had been off that day as well. I think we had actually gone kayaking earlier that day, like early that morning, and finished up at like, you know, noon or 2 o'clock or something like that. Ended up going back to my house to drink for the rest of the day. So, you know, we go back to my house and we're drinking beer. You know, we started off with beer. You know, we're just drinking, just having a good time, just hanging out at my place. And at some point, I told my buddy, you know, I want to go on an adventure, because that's often what would happen. You know, before I got drunk, I was totally cool just hanging out at home or at somebody's house. I wasn't trying to get in any trouble. I just wanted to relax. But the more and more that I drank, the more amped up that I became, because I'm one of those people that I guess gets the opioid effect from alcohol, which is a real phenomenon to where, you know, alcohol is a depressant, but for me, it stimulates me. Alcohol gets me wound up to a point. Now, there's a you know, a crest that I get to, and once I hit that crest, it's all downhill from there. You know, once I hit that crest, that's when I would, you know, disappear. You know, I would have 10 friends over at my house, hanging out in my garage, and once I got to that crest point, I would just walk away, walk into my bedroom, wouldn't tell anybody a word. And I would just pass out and leave all these guys in my garage, and my wife would have to go out there and tell them, you know, he's gone to bed. He just went in there and laid down and went to sleep. And she'd have to tell him, you know, you guys need to go ahead and leave because he just passed out. You know, you can't be here if he's not awake. And my wife would get so upset with me when that would happen. And it was just stupid of me to do. I shouldn't have done it, but I wasn't thinking. Once again, I was wasted drunk. I mean, there was no logical thinking during that period of time. I don't even know what was even going on. You know, I didn't even know. I would just get up and just go lay down. I guess because I was tired. I wasn't even thinking about the fact that I'm leaving all these guys just sitting there. And I've talked about the time that, you know, I had left my job as a chef, and the night, it was like my going away party, and all of my guys came over to my house for my going away party. I got so drunk that by the time that they showed up over here, they were here for maybe half an hour, and I just got up and walked inside and laid down. I was done, and I've got all these guys who had gotten dressed up, brought a bunch of stuff over here. You know, they brought food to cook over here, all this stuff. They brought chips and snacks and a cake. I mean, they really did it up for me, and I just went inside and passed out. But I am wasting so much time not getting to the actual story that I'm supposed to be telling today. Like I said, so I think we went kayaking that morning. We came back to my house. We continued to drink the rest of the day. Sometime in the afternoon, I would imagine probably about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, that's when I told him, like I said, you know, I start getting that feeling, like that euphoric, amped up, hyped up feeling. I wanted to go get into some trouble. I really wanted to get some dopamine going. So I told him, I said, let's go get into something. He's like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know. And I told him, are you okay to drive? And he was like, yeah, I'll drive. So we headed out. And I wake up the next morning. I don't remember anything. That's all I remember. I remember us getting into his Jeep and leaving. And all I remember was waking up the next morning, how I used to wake up a lot of mornings. I'd wake up, stretch. I stretch every morning when I wake up. The sun's shining in the window, and I'm like, it's going to be a great day today. And then all of a sudden, I started getting these flashbacks. I had no recollection of what had happened the night before. I remembered, I was hanging out during the day. I remembered I was getting into his Jeep and leaving, and then that's all I remembered. But then I started getting these little teeny tiny flashbacks as the morning started to progress. And I remembered like a guy yelling at me. But I couldn't put the pieces together to the puzzle. All I remember was some guy was yelling at me, telling me that he was going to call the police. And I remembered us being in getting back in his Jeep and flying down this dirt road, trying to get away. And that's all I could remember. I didn't remember what had happened, why this guy was yelling at us, why he told us that we were going to be going to jail, why we were flying down the road. I didn't remember anything. I was lost. And this used to happen to me all the time. And talk about getting super bad anxiety when you can't remember anything from the night before, and then you've got these little snippets of memory of you doing something ridiculous, and you're like, oh my gosh, you're about to panic because you're worried, did I do something I'm gonna get in trouble for? You don't remember. And like I said, that used to happen to me all the time. And this time was no different. Here I am, it's probably like 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm steadily trying to piece these little pieces of the puzzle together, and I cannot manage to piece it together. So I hop on the phone and start calling my buddy. Well, he doesn't answer because he's still asleep. And he was one of those guys that would sleep until 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That wasn't me. I was up 5, 6 o'clock in the morning every single day, regardless. I don't care if I stayed up all night long till 5 a.m., I was playing around with that stuff, if you know what I mean, and was up all night long. If I fell asleep for 1 hour, I was right back up again at 6 a.m. I just could not sleep in, which I probably wouldn't have had such bad hangovers every day if I could have slept some of them off, but I just never could sleep them off. Back to my story. I keep veering off the story. So, once again, I wake up and I'm panicking, and I'm trying to call him because I cannot remember what happened. Well, finally, at some point in the afternoon that day, he finally gets back with me and starts telling me the story of what happened. Because as soon as I got on the phone with him, I'm like, dude, I don't remember what happened. All I remember is that guy yelling at us. I remember being threatened to have the police called on us, and I remember us, flying down the road. And I'm like, what happened? And he says, you don't remember anything at all? And I said, no, I don't remember anything. He said, there was a house. And this is like a mile down the road from where I lived at. And I lived in a really big neighborhood too. But we went maybe not even a mile down the road. Thinking about it now, it might have been a half of a mile or a quarter of a mile, a third of a mile or something down the road. It wasn't far. You just got to the entrance of my neighborhood, took a left, and like I said, maybe went a third of a mile. And then there was a dirt road on the right-hand side that kind of veered off. Down that dirt road, there was an old abandoned house on the left-hand side that kind of sat back off the road in the woods. And the woods were all overgrown. They were overgrown all around the house. And I had driven by this house many, many times and looked at it because this dirt road that we went down was one of the roads that we used to frequent in our Jeeps. We just used to like to cruise down it. It was a really long dirt road. There were a bunch of horse farms on it. And there were some areas of that road that were pretty steep and just kind of treacherous. And we used to like to get out there in our Jeeps and just kind of, ride around, tear stuff up. And we weren't causing any problems when we were out there. But like I said, I had driven out here all these times and had seen that abandoned house many times. And I guess that afternoon I told my friend, because we left and we're just driving down the road, I said, turn down this road. And we turned down that road, and I said, there's that house. Let's go to that house right there. And my buddy was like, I don't think that's a good idea. And I managed to talk him in to going to that house. So we pulled over on the side of the road, on the side of this dirt road, in front of this abandoned house, which is probably 200-300 feet from the road. But like I said, it's completely all overgrown. There's brush growing up all around it. Bushes that are all overgrown. This place had not been lived in for 30, 40 years or something. Roof was starting to cave in on itself, but there was still furniture inside the house. There was still knickknacks up on the shelves. I mean, there was still toothpaste in the bathroom, all this stuff. But anyway, we went inside the house and started walking around and exploring this place. I was just really interested in checking the place out. But had I been sober, I would have never, ever had parked on the side of the road and stepped foot onto somebody else's private property without permission. And this day, that's exactly what I did. Him and I went back there and started, exploring around this old abandoned house. And we were there for a little while. And as he's telling me the story, now I'm starting to remember a little bit more. I'm starting to kind of piece this together as he's telling me the story about what happened. And then we get to the point where I'm like, dude, what happened with the guy yelling at us, talking about, he was going to call the police on us. And that's when he asked me, he said, you don't remember that at all either? And I said, no, I don't. What ended up happening is that since we had parked his Jeep on the side of the road in front of that house, I guess the owner of the house lived on that road as well. From what I'm, putting together, I gather that he owned a whole bunch of land on that side of the road. He probably had, let's say 50, 60 acres on that side. He lived up a little bit further down the road and had a newer house that he had built. But that abandoned house, I guess this was family land because that abandoned house was his mother's home. So once again, this was family land. That was like their old family home. That's the home that his mother grew up in. And it had, it had just gotten old. Nobody had taken care of it for a long time, and it just started falling apart. But once again, we had no business being out there. We absolutely none at all. Number one, we were trespassing. And that's, you can already get in enough trouble for trespassing already as it is. But not only were we trespassing, but when the man saw my friend's Jeep parked on the side of the road, he just parked his truck and got out and walked up to the home and caught us on the inside of the house. Were we doing anything wrong in there, like breaking stuff? Were we stealing stuff? No, we weren't doing anything. We were just exploring. That's really all that we were doing. But that doesn't matter. We were in somebody else's home. Did it even matter that the roof was caved in on itself on one part of the house? No, it did not matter. We were in somebody else's house, and we did not have permission to be so. And the worst part about all this is that I was in my 30s when this happened. I should have known better. Here I am, a professional in my town. I've got a name for myself, and I'm trespassing in someone else's home. And like I said, he's telling me about this guy. He parked. He came walking up through the woods, and we didn't see him coming because we're inside the house, and he walked up through the woods. So, there's all kinds of stuff going on where we would have never even known he was walking up anyway. But when he walked in, he called us in there. And from what my friend told me, he started screaming at us and said not to go anywhere. He told us to freeze and that he was calling the police and he did not want us leaving, that he was basically holding us under citizen's arrest until the police arrived. Well, my friend and I were not hanging around for that. And as he's telling me the story, once again, I'm remembering this stuff now. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm sitting here thinking about this. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not good. My friend and I just took off running, and this was an older gentleman, so we were able to get, away from him, and we ran and got in my friend's Jeep and started hauling butt down the road. Well, that guy got in his truck and started chasing after us. Well, my friend lost them. But once again, we're not far from my home. We're right down the street. But my buddy got away from them, and we went back to my house that night. And my friend told me that he took his Jeep and we parked it in my backyard of my home so that nobody would see it. And that night, there were police driving around my neighborhood, I guess looking for us. And when I woke up that morning and called him, after I had finally spoken with him, I already had super bad anxiety thinking, something happened last night. And then after I spoke with him and he starts telling me the whole story about what actually went down, I almost had a full-on panic attack, because then I started putting all this stuff together and I'm thinking, okay, he got my buddy's license plate that evening. Well, at least he could have gotten my buddy's license plate because it was still in his car and we were parked right there in front of this house. So in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, okay, he got his license plate. And even though we did get away, he's going to call the police and tell them his license plate. And the police are going to, look up the license plate number and they're going to go visit my buddy. And after they go visit him, they're going to come talk to me. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay, they're going to talk to him and then they're going to want to talk to me. And then both of us are going to end up going to jail for, probably trespassing. And who knows what other charges. I don't know what they could charge you with, but I would imagine since we were in somebody's house and we didn't have permission, they probably could have charged us with burglary or larceny. I don't know. But it probably would not have been good. So I spent the whole entire day that day, with an anxiety level that was a 15 on a scale of 1 to 10. The whole entire day, I'm just thinking to myself, I'm going to get in trouble for this. They are going to find out that was us that was there. And I live right down the street. I'm thinking to myself, that guy saw me that night. Like, I was right in front of him. And, what if he sees me? What if he's out driving around and sees me out in my front yard with my family one day? Or just sees me at Walmart or sees me anywhere? I'm thinking to myself, I'm busted. There's just no way around it. I'm probably going to end up going to jail over this. And all because of a stupid decision that I made because I was intoxicated. Because had I been sober, there's no way on God's green earth I would have ever stepped foot on that man's property without permission. I just would not have done so. But because of being intoxicated, not thinking, and using my drunk mind and doing with the stuff that I used to always do, just being spontaneous and being an idiot, I almost landed myself in jail. And, it wasn't just that one day either that I had super bad anxiety thinking about that. That went on for days because I was just thinking the cops are going to either show up at my house or my work any day now. And I kept talking to my buddy. I'm like, has anybody contacted you? Have you heard from anybody? And he's like, no, I haven't heard from anybody. And I kept telling him too, I'm like, man, they've got your license plate. They're going to come talk to you. That guy I know has called the police and we're going to end up getting in big trouble for this. And he's like, we didn't do anything wrong. I'm like, doesn't matter. We were on that guy's property. The whole point to today's video is that because I got intoxicated one day and decided to make a poor decision, just looking for a thrill, looking to have a good time, something that I never would have done if I had been sober. Never. I would never even think about doing something like that right now. It wouldn't even cross my mind. But in my intoxicated mind, I was willing to do a lot of things. It's just insane. I could have thrown my whole life away that day. I could have ended up going to prison probably because of that. If that guy wanted to push it, who knows what could have happened. And once again, not only could that guy have called the police on me, but he could have shot me that day. That guy could have walked up on his house and shot us. And, the one thing that I do remember from that, after he started telling me that story, is I remember the guy screaming at us and telling us that this is my mom's house. So not only is, we're trespassing on this guy's land, but we're trespassing in his mother's home who's deceased. I'm sure that really struck a chord with him in the wrong way that day. Here's these two guys, drunk as skunks, that he catches, rummaging around in his mother's old home. It's just insanity. It truly is insanity. Doing the same things over and over and over again and expecting different results. It just doesn't work. And the reason I'm telling the story today is just that, I want people to remember, that we do make very poor decisions when we get intoxicated. And sometimes those decisions that we make can be life-changing, forever changing, things that we can never turn back and change. Things happen every single day because people are intoxicated. People make bad decisions every single day, and there's no takebacks on it. There's no turning around. And once some things happen, there's just no coming back from it. And it could be one drunk night of just, doing something, and next thing you know, you're spending time in jail. This doesn't really have to do with alcohol per se, but it was crazy. I saw a friend of mine that I haven't seen in like 15 years yesterday, and we were having a conversation, and this guy went on to start telling me that back a few years ago, that he was driving down the interstate one night, and it was a dark, foggy night. It had been raining, and he's on the interstate. And he said that just all of a sudden, this guy walked out in front of his car and he hit him. And the guy's no longer around anymore. He passed away on the scene. Like, my friend watched him pass. And it really messed him up. He's still messed up from it right now. He wasn't intoxicated that night. He's not even a drinker at all. He was completely stone cold sober that day. And you're not expecting people to walk out in front of your car on an interstate. You're just not expecting people to be on the interstate. And this guy just walked right out in front of his car. And for the rest of his life, he's going to be affected by that. And it's affected him in ways that, some of the stuff that he was telling me, it's made him question his faith. It's made him question a lot of things. As a matter of fact, it's changed his religion. Because of that incident. And it could have been something like that for any of us. Just one night out driving around with a buzz. You think everything's honky-dory. You're on your way home from hanging out with somebody. You were just over at your girlfriend or boyfriend's house, and you guys had a bottle of wine that you split between each other, and you're just 5 minutes from home, and next thing you know, an accident happens, and that could be life-changing. You can never go back. And things like that happen all the time. But if we stay sober, I'm not saying that things like that can't happen, but the chances of it happening are drastically reduced. The reason I told the story today is that, once again, we make really poor decisions when we're intoxicated. When we're sober, we think clearly. We know what decision to make. We know the right choice to make when we're sober. And I'm not saying that when we're sober that we, all the decisions that we make are the right ones, because that's not the case. But the chances of us making a bad decision when we're sober, I would say are probably 1 out of 10 compared to 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 when we're intoxicated. We just drastically reduce the chances of us getting ourselves into trouble. And, once again, I just wanted to tell a story today to remind you guys of... oh, that's fireworks or something. But I just wanted to talk about this today so that, as a reminder, to remind you guys of the stupid things that we do when we're drunk or high. We're not thinking with our brains. And like I said, we can make decisions that can be life-changing, forever life-changing. So, guys, I don't want to leave this on a negative note. Let's have a wonderful Friday today. I hope you guys have a really great sober weekend this weekend. And I think that's it for today's video. You know, like I said, that's not something that I used to do all the time, stuff like that. And it's not like I was, you know, once again, like taking anything or anything like that. It was just an old abandoned house that I'd always wanted to see. And that day, I decided to go up in there because I wasn't thinking. So, other than that, guys, I think that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching today. Let's stay sober today. Let's stay sober all weekend. But we'll worry about tomorrow when it gets here. Because tomorrow's already gone. Tomorrow's not here yet. I mean, yesterday's gone. Tomorrow's not here yet. But we do have today. And today we can decide to stay sober and not drink or use. So, let's do that today. Thank you so much for watching today, guys. I really do appreciate it. And once again, I hope you guys have a great, safe Friday night tonight. And until tomorrow, I will see you guys then. I love you guys so much.